You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
Oh, it's hard work being this good. Oh, it hurts. Oh, baby. Give it up. Turn it loose.
It's not about black.
I don't mean to brag, but I'm the greatest.
It's because you never saw me.
It's not about white.
Honey, I'm home.
How much money did you make today?
I miss you too.
We out the projects, baby. Where we gonna live at, son? Central Park West somewhere? What you gonna buy your mama, son? Come on. A big house. It's the will of the man. It ain't the skill of the man. Don't be afraid of nobody. Take it.
Go strong, baby.
Like nobody's better than you.
You have a son named Jesus Shuttlesworth? Is your son considered the #1 high school prospect in these United States?
He's awesome, baby, with a capital A.
Governor's made a request that your son seriously consider enrolling in his alma mater, Big State. The governor's given me his word. He'll do everything in his power to cut your time here short.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can come by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are hanging with a classic horror monster friend that I don't think we've talked about yet, so join the sleaze.
That's true. We haven't talked about him yet, but we will also decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover over there. And Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for eight years? Over 8 years
Something
at this
like that.
point. Yeah, there's 210 plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films year round, which we are coming up on 70 of, or maybe we already have. So if you haven't made the jump yet, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. We recommend doing that. And speaking of which, because of some time travel shenanigans, we have a massive list of patrons to get through. So I apologize that I'm going to be going through this quickly here, but little background show business. I went on my honeymoon. We recorded a bunch of episodes while we were gone. This is our first one back, and my God, thank you all so much up front. We had Hugh sign up, Adam Smith, Ilya Galperin, Ghost, Cabaret, and I actually have to hit a second page.
Nice.
We had Matt Cocky, Angel B, Jonah, Michael Pollack, Letrist, Matthew Stanaslovich, Michael Leash, Coffins, The Discarded, Image, Renor Lapistica, Mara the Demon, Steve, SDK, Mike Ray, James Ritchie, who signed up at the annual tier and getting a bit of a monthly discounted rate for getting an entire year of the show in advance. We had Fiona sign up, Aaron Crawford, Merrick, Alozi, Young Seven, Gabe Creviston, Ryan Ward, Wine Mom, Luis Del Rios, Doc Bones, Cooper Hewitt, Bill Bro T. Baggins, Ricky
Nice.
Epic Sauce, Adam Emrit, Harry Likes Batman, and that is all of them. So thanks so much to all you folks. We appreciate that support a lot and hope you're enjoying those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. That's amazing.
That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are listening to us on either one of those platforms, and I can see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug, as always, is merch. If you haven't got yours yet, there is a Sleazoids dad cap and a poster blowout themed shirt designed by our friend Brandon Lim of Black Belt Cinema for you to purchase. You can get that in the description of this episode or over at sleazoidspodcast.com. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over here on the main feed would have heard from us, where we would have been joined by our annual Australian correspondent, Andrew Law, who had us head to hell and discuss a double feature of At De Young's teen fantasy horror comedy road movie called Highway to Hell from 1992, literally about the hell cop Terminator hunting down some teens. And we paired that with Alex Cox's punk rock Western parody film Straight to Hell from 1987, which really had nothing to do with each other except for they had hell in the title.
Straight to Hell is more of like a like you said, punk rock comedy. It's got a very loose attitude and kind of like focused on just
if you want to get
degeneracy.
drunk and hang out with some punk rockers who are pretending to be cowboys, that's all that movie is.
Yeah, and then Highway to Hell has the kind of more cartoonish makeup effects, and it kind of has like some sex comedy stuff included in it. So it's a little more, I don't know, silly in a way.
Yeah, and almost a Tim Burton-esque or Beetlejuice-esque depiction of like what the hell underworld kind of looks like and getting into fights with demons and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if you haven't heard that episode, that was 2 weeks ago over on the main feed with Andrew. Go back, go check it out. But then last week over on the Patreon, it was actually your guys' patron-voted double feature, which we do once every 2 months. We have you guys nominate a bunch of double features you want to hear us talk about and have you upvote them to decide which one we talk about. And so you guys wanted to hear us talk about a double feature of 90s Jerry Bruckheimer commercial action thriller style films, as well as the idea of Hollywood vets teaching their ways to the new era of movie stars. So we talked about Michael Bay's terrorist plot actioner, The Rock, from 1996 with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage, and we paired it with Tony Scott's paranoid conspiracy thriller Enemy of the State from 1998 with Gene Hackman and Will Smith.
Yeah, very cool to kind of have an unofficial sequel to the conversation. It's and it kind of works when you watch Enemy of the State in that way, in this weird way. Two movies I want to love, and I'm not quite there, but I'm learning to love them more every time I watch them. But a lot of great stuff in them, honestly.
Those actors are very charismatic, no doubt. I keep going back.
Yes. Yeah, the performances are so massive in both of those movies. So they're worth the watch, even if I don't know. There's something about them. You can listen to the episode, but they I hold back on them a little bit, but they're still great.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard that episode, though, that was last week again over on the Patreon, patreon.com/SLEAZOIDS podcast, if you're interested. But moving on to this week, we are joined for the first time by a guy I've wanted to have on the show for a while. He's a sports and culture writer for places such as the New York Times, ESPN, GQ, Slam, and many others. He also hosts and produces the Best Basketball and/or Raptors podcast in Canada, one of the only ones that I listen to, called Hello and Welcome. That guest is Alex Wong. So Alex, hello and welcome, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on this beautiful weekend here in Toronto. You know, like you mentioned, like, you know, I do a podcast regularly, you know, with my buddy Will, but, you know, I gotta admit, I'm a little nervous today. I feel like talking film, you know, I know it's sports related, but talking film, I feel like I'm playing an away game, you know? So that's how I'm feeling right now.
That's what I felt when I started the show with Josh. Goes to film school. I'm just musician. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes people forget that Jamie's the audio guy. Jamie's a musician, but you know, he's been doing it. He's put 8 years of time in now. I think Jamie's got the film critic.
This was my own film school, the show itself.
And Alex, we're more than happy to, you know, bring you into the fold in that way, because, you know, you're buddies with our pal Jason Buford, who comes on the show regularly, always talking about film and sports, always trying to kind of connect us with sports people a little bit. And you know, last time we had him on, he was like, you know, you got to talk to these guys at some point. And I noticed, you know, that for you in particular, Alex, you had actually started up a Letterboxd account and we're starting to go film bro mode the same way that Jason did. So we were like, we got to help this guy like jump head first in. So welcome to the movie podcasting side of things. And now, luckily, when chatting with you, we kind of had some ideas on, you know, moving our show a bit, maybe halfway towards yours and talking about basketball movies specifically. And so normally we have the guest kind of choose a double feature. Here we kind of work one out with you, but we're going to be talking about two 90s basketball movies made by two directors who I believe like really do love this sport, Ron Shelton and Spike Lee, and starring two of the biggest black male stars of the 90s. We have Denzel Washington and Wesley Snipes here. And though one is kind of a goofy rom-com and the other is more of a serious melodrama, both I think actually get into the idea of basketball as a path for the economically desperate, a tool that you use. So, you know, of course, we kind of want to talk about that. And we also want to talk about specifically, you know, do these movies get the basketball right, man? Do you watch this and you're like, these guys hoop?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the important part of like sports movies, you know. That's why I've always said, you know, my favorite basketball movie of all time is Uncut Gems. I mean, it's basketball related, adjacent, because, you know, obviously it's got Kevin Garnett, it's got all the sports gambling elements, and they're able to get away with it because they're playing real game footage versus having to like recreate, right? Like you look at TV shows, I think like Winning Time that came out recently, you know, people really scrutinize kind of like how they replicate the on-court. And I feel like, I mean, that's always been the forever struggle with like any sports movie, whether it's baseball, football, basketball. Basketball probably is the hardest to replicate, because if you just kind of miss out on the realism of it a little bit, I feel like it comes off as pretty corny. But I do feel like these two movies, I'm sure we'll get into it, but like these two movies do a pretty good job.
Yeah, I found both of them kind of they have a very natural flow when they show the game, and whether it's choreographed or they're just, you know, watching a game itself, it feels very realistic. And the way that they're both shot too, with all the slow motion, is great.
I was gonna say they're also just filmed lovingly. Like these are guys who like very clearly have at least played and kind of get the appeal of what is this. These movies both make me want to like go across the street and like grab a ball. And you know,
not me. No, I've long retired from playing basketball. If you guys ever want to play pickleball, let me know.
Hey, I might actually be down for that, because I've been trying to get into something. I've been trying to figure out like a men's league hockey situation too, because that was the only sport that I played for like a decade. And I also think that is something that I'm a lot more critical of when I see it on screen, because like teaching someone how to skate for 20 years is something you can't do for an actor. That's why that movie Miracle, it's usually considered one of the best ones, because they did what they did with He Got Game, and they just taught like, you know, like OHL players basically to act, and they were like, Kurt Russell's your coach, have him scream at you, and I'm like, it works, it's convincing enough. No, I was not basketball. Basketball's probably third tier below baseball for the ones that I probably pay the most attention to. But because I'm in Toronto, and because we have 3 sports teams, maybe 2 that I enjoy following right now, I'm a lot more interested in these movies. Get me stoked on it. So that being said, I think we're going to jump right into it. Let's kick things off. We're going to go chronologically. We're going to be... did I even say what the fucking movies are? We're going to be talking about Ron Shelton's White Man Can't Jump.
What kind of podcast did I get invited to?
What is this? What is this? Already derailing it. We're so excited to get into sports. We're talking White Men Can't Jump from 1992, directed by Ron Shelton. I did name the directors already, so I feel good about that. And we're going to be talking about Spike Lee's He Got Game from 1998.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely the longest amount of time I've ever spent to actually name what it is we're talking about, but that's what we're on today. Let's do it. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk White Men Can't Jump.
I'm making them mad. Most guys don't play good when they're mad.
Look, you know you're embarrassing me. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I'm doing.
I only have 4 words for you. White men can't jump. I have a business proposal for you, as if you don't mind hustling.
What kind of hustle?
$500, baby, and you can pick my teammate.
Give him the chump.
You mean play basketball?
All right, we are talking White Men Can't Jump, the 1992 sports comedy rom-com written and directed by Ron Shelton and starring Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson as a pair of street basketball hustlers who at first don't really like each other or trying to hustle each other, and eventually become, you know, friends and team up in an attempt to score an even bigger bag between the two of them. But this is our first time on the show talking about college basketball player and minor league baseball infielder turned writer-director Ron Shelton, who was famous for his late 80s and 90s run of sports movies, including his directorial debut Bull Durham, which was a baseball rom-com starring Kevin Costner, Tim Robbins, and Susan Sarandon, and was based on his own experiences playing for the Baltimore Orioles farm system. And if any of you haven't seen it, it's amazing. I recommend everyone who loved Challengers go back to it, because when that came out, it had like a sort of similar off-kilter love triangle at its center, but just the tone of the movie is so charmingly casual and relaxed and kind of low stakes. Like it's more of like a hangout romantic comedy register, because it suits for him what he felt was like the environment of minor league baseball. He's like, we don't fucking take this shit seriously. It's just fun. We're hanging out playing baseball. It's not got quite the intensity. But that film was actually so good it garnered Shelton a Best Original Screenplay Oscar nomination and got him a studio deal that resulted in, for him, a string of character-driven rom-com and sports movies, including this film that we're going to be talking about basketball, obviously. He wrote another basketball movie for Friedkin, too, during this time called Blue Chips. And also, he did a pro golf movie, Tin Cup, which also starred Costner, and he did a boxing movie as well called Play It to the Bone. But while we're jumping in here off the top, I just want to say that my favorite quality about Shelton in particular is that he actually is one of the rare athlete first, had the love of sports and competition ingrained in him since he was a kid, who became a filmmaker after. And so his movies, in my mind, are actually filled with the kind of passion to pursue. He latches him, even when he's writing flawed characters, he has a lot of empathy and warmth towards characters who enjoy sports, but also, view it as not just a hobby, as a dream. And because he was never like a wealthy pro athlete, he only ever played in the minors, his characters are always more of a working class character as well. And like they're in it for the love of the game in the way that he was. Or in the case of White Men Can't Jump, they use their talents to, try and manipulate their economic conditions. And, it's almost like a cuter or more compassionate and lower stakes version of like a con man or like a hustler movie in that way, as Alex was talking about with Uncut Gems. This is like the less serious version of like where gambling and hustling will take you.
Yeah. I also really like the way he portrays, like, he says it, I think it was a quote in the wiki I was reading where he says something like he was really obsessed with the rituals and the posturing and the kind of theater that comes from basketball. Specifically, I like when he shows how it's like a different type of game kind of results in just a different attitude or a different way that you are talking to your opponent, like a 1-on-1 versus a 2-on-2 or a 5-on-5. It always kind of drastically changes the dynamic of the game and just how people approach it and how people kind of talk to each other. And so that I found really fascinating, and it works really well once they start building the character stuff with Woody and Snipes. So
yeah,
sure. I think too.
Alex, this wasn't your first time watching this, right? This was a rewatch for you?
Yeah, rewatch. I mean, both movies were a rewatch, but I gotta say, like, I hadn't watched these movies since probably like the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, and it's like, if you were to ask me before the rewatch, like, to describe White Men Can't Jump, like, I wouldn't say it was like obviously like a serious movie. Obviously it's played off as pretty light compared to He Got Game, but like you mentioned, there are some serious themes in here, and I found it to be more kind of heartwarming and heartbreaking at times than I do remember it. But I think, speaking to Ron Shelton too, like, I thought this movie being in the early 90s, like, it really captured a particular vibe too, right? Like, basketball, I think, was just starting to really penetrate North American culture in a way that I think you see it had been like fully matured by the time you get to like He Got Game in like 98, Michael Jordan, the Bulls, like, the Dream Team, all of this stuff. Whereas here, White Men Can't Jump, like, I love the vibe, of Venice Beach, obviously a very popular spot for street ball, and I just love the costuming and everything in the movie too, like, the champion, NBA jerseys, the high top sneakers, and like even little things like JB talking about like the trash talk and stuff. Like, I forgot how many your mama jokes like we used to make. Like, this used to be I mean, like, I grew up, like, I'm born in 84, like, grew up in the 90s, like, this used to be the thing.
Definitely. And
like it made me very nostalgic.
Oh man, was little Alex doing like YMCA like pickup games, or like?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, like, it's crazy because like basketball, like, I mean, not to tell a whole immigrant story or anything, but it's like, I immigrated here from Hong Kong, with my parents when I was like 8 years old in 92, and like at the time I didn't know how to speak English, like that was a second language. I was learning to fit in at school. Playing basketball was the only way to make friends.
Oh,
like,
sure,
that was the only, because there's no language barrier when you're just checking the ball and playing and stuff. And like, I remember just even like making the school team in like grade 7, grade 8 or whatever. Like, I wasn't a great player, but it's like, that's how I made my first like close friends here. And it's like, you look at the way that like, even like they portray, street ball here in the movie, I feel like it's very accurate depiction of just like, like anybody can kind of jump into those things, but you gotta have thick skin as well, right? Because like, people will be coming at you.
And there is that sense of like kind of just the way the game is played, and it's like the passing of the ball, shooting the alley oops and stuff. There's like a flow state kind of to it, and I feel like there's you can really create a deep connection with people on your team as you're doing this, and it almost becomes like you're doing it through like telepathy or something. Like you're not even talking about it anymore.
I totally agree. I was just gonna say that too. That like the way that both of these movies shoot basketball in this lovingly slow motion. Like I mean, you mentioned, Jamie, the Ron Shelton's quote about the rituals, and that he felt like he does feel like it's like this mythic, wordless connection that is happening between all these people and what they're like there's a psychology, there's a physicality that's taking place between all of these people. And obviously he'll also throw in the the sort of immature sort of ego pissing contest shit as well, with all the trash talking that they do to each other. But to them, that's also a psychological gamesmanship. It's part of the war that you're playing. It's part of how you are making your way up the ladder in a way, right? And I think that that's so interesting that like the movie on its surface is Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, who are both very charismatic actors, shit talking each other, smirking, and doing it in like such a low stakes fashion of like, can I get like $100 off this guy?
Yeah.
And yet it feels like this huge deal when they start playing and it starts mattering and the consequences start hitting for these guys. And I feel like that's sort of just the contribution that like an actual athlete turned filmmaker brings to this. Like this stuff isn't important and it feels huge even when it's just two guys shit talking each other over $100 to be like, how am I going to eat later today, kind of deal, or how am I going to get out of this neighborhood, how am I going to help my family, how am I, all kinds of things like that.
And him showing kind of like just the respect on the court and the hierarchy in a way, like a good player to a mediocre player. There's plenty of mocking in that sense, and even with the friendships, as like Snipes and Harrelson's character, their friendship kind of grows. It doesn't let up when it comes to the insulting that they do to each other. It even ends with that, right? Where they're still kind of going back and forth and chirping each other and everything. But there's a mutual respect to that. It's like you can hold your own, and there's something there. And eventually too, when we get into Woody and Rosie, their boyfriend and girlfriend dynamic, eventually he's talking about like the rules of men on the court. Like once they place the bet, they can't take the money back, no matter how shitty the outcome might have been, or you find out that you were duped or something like that. There's just kind of this certain sense of rules that belong on the court, and it's cool to just always establish those things and then explore them. Yeah.
There's the code of men, and then there's also room especially in Ron Shelton's movies, often for the women. And here you do have the girlfriend, and also you have Rhonda, the wife of Wesley Snipes, who both almost kind of have like a different story happening, where they're like, you guys need to get over your like macho pissing contest that you're in, because like we actually have like Rosie Perez is practically like his accountant, and actually she's the only reason he even ends up with the money to be able to do what it is they end up doing in the end, which I find a really interesting choice by Shelton, because it really does think that like, or it does feel like at times Snipes and Harrelson, because Shelton obviously connects with guys like this, they can overwhelm the movie with just their personalities, but there's enough periphery detail in here to be like, these guys are still behaving like juvenile shitheads.
This movie kind of ultimately becomes like a film about becoming an adult and getting a job. Like that's kind of what it's about at the end, which is really funny.
But still playing Venice Beach pickup ball with your buddy while you're doing it, because like the vibes of that I think are also a huge thing. I mean, Alex already brought it up, but like it's obviously a very popular place to play. It's also Shelton himself experienced playing it a bit, although he told a fantastic story in one of the oral histories where he basically said he played a lot of outdoor stuff until one day he showed up to one of the courts and he saw that the court was like suspiciously empty, and he asked someone what had happened, and he said that someone went to their glove compartment, which is a detail that makes its way into the movie later, because he said that meant that someone got serious over, and it wasn't even like a getting hustled. I think it was like a block or something. Like someone didn't like a call that they made, and they went to go get a gun from their glove compartment. And he said, "Yeah, maybe I should play indoor ball for a little bit."
It's a serious game out there.
Yeah, and so his is a little bit more of a, a romanticized vision of his time playing outdoors. Like even, I love the
Although
old
I think that
geezers
does
fucking
happen.
singing the old songs. Oh, for sure. Yeah, it does happen in the movie too.
Yeah, because I think there is a part where I think like you said, it's like kind of the opposite of what happened with Shelton, but it was because he gets hustled and at first he threatens him with a knife and he's like, I'm going, getting a gun, and I'll be back. So you guys got to go do something about it.
Well, it's funny. I think that character, I think that was Marquise Johnson, right? And
it was, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he's he's former player, was in the NBA. I think most known with the Milwaukee Bucks, and now he's like a basketball analyst. And it's funny. The only reason why I always remember White Man Can't Jump the movie is because I feel like every year when it's the anniversary date of the release, I always see Marquise on social media, whether it's on Twitter and Instagram, just answering fan questions and reminding fans that he was in this movie. And it's something that he loves talking about. And for people that are super online in the sports space, his son Josiah Johnson is now a sports podcaster, analyst too, and one of the kind of biggest names kind of in sports as well. So a lot of these guys that I follow, especially from LA, they do a really good job of keeping the spirit of this movie alive. Awesome. People out in LA continue to swear by this movie, and I don't know if we want to veer into calling this a cult classic. I mean, it was a pretty mainstream movie, I would say, but out of all the sports movies, I think in this era in the 90s, this one really does kind of survive the test of time, and it's something that people still remember and talk about, which I think is rare compared to a lot of other movies.
Yeah, what I found too when I was watching it is I felt like the trajectory of the plot I've seen many times in certain different variations, but there was something about the tone of this movie that I felt was just very different. It's it would dabble into these serious situations, but it always kept its lightheartedness. But at the same time, it has consequences for its characters, and
that's the big thing.
Yeah,
for me, the fact that dramatically this, we'll get into it by the end, but Rosie Perez does end up leaving Woody Harrelson at a certain point, and it's he just has to live with that. That's not technically a happy ending to a rom-com, but there's something still charming about it, and it doesn't sacrifice being funny in order to make that serious point either. This movie, part of it is Snipes and Harrelson. I mean, I think their chemistry was pretty amazing. I know at one point they did approach Denzel to be in this movie, and he passed on it because him and Spike Lee were actually gearing up for Malcolm X. A very different vibe. Definitely. He was like, yeah, I don't know that this one is for me. So he passed on it, but he wasn't interested, and he did, I think, tell a couple other people who ended up getting into the movie. Spike Lee and Denzel were both aware of this movie getting made.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that was also how they ended up getting Detroit Pistons and Milwaukee Bucks Hall of Famer Bob Lanier. Is that who it is?
Yeah,
Bob
Lanier, yeah.
Yeah, so he was the basketball consultant and coach for the film. So he was literally the guy coaching. I think he put Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes through a 12-week boot camp or something like that to be can I bring these guys to at the least lower tier college level play so that when they hitting shots in the film, when they're dunking in the film, it doesn't look absolutely ridiculous. And so teaching those guys to do that, but also just the natural chemistry that both of these guys, I mean, Wesley Snipes at the time, he had been a supporting actor in things like King of New York and New Jack City, and he was chewing scenes and being awesome. In New Jack City, he's practically doing a cartoonish gangster villain kind of character in Nino Brown, and this is the proper movie star role where they're you're going to be a co-lead actor. We're going to just completely rely on your screen magnetism and your comedic timing. And Woody Harrelson had been a household name for his role as the bartender on Cheers, which he had been on since 1985. But it was the 1-2 punch of this film and Natural Born Killers, which was Woody Harrelson is also a movie star as well. And so the fact that both of these guys just happened to connect at the same time and apparently did their first ever movie together as well. It was I can't remember what it was called. It was the football movie. I looked this up. Major League was the baseball. Wildcats.
cool.
It was their
I
first
didn't know
ever
that.
movie they did together, and it was a football movie. And I was just like, oh, so these guys already kind of had a bit of camaraderie even before getting on set with each other and starting to talk shit about each other. Like when they first meet in this film, and it's the Yo Mama jokes. It's Spike or it's Snipes calling him the Brady Bunch white boy, the chump geek who can't ball. Maybe he can't. Maybe he can jump. Who knows? And Harrelson, ends up being picked as essentially like later on in the film, like his teammate, and being like the person he has to try to run hustles with. And every time they do the performative thing of like running the hustles against these guys and being like, I could beat both of you guys, I just don't have a teammate here. And they all immediately point to Woody Harrelson in the tie-dye flat brim and like the Atlas print Hawaiian shirt. They were like, we want that guy as your guy.
It is really funny too to have like the idea that that's going to work every single time, and it does, is honestly like a joke in itself. Is really funny because the setup itself. It's like there's a maybe a solid chance that would work, but there is this off chance that they just choose another guy on the court, and because they have the opponents making the decisions, and that's kind of part of the hustle. It's like the psychology of it or whatever. It's like, well, if they choose, then it couldn't possibly be a scheme or anything like that. But it is kind of funny to think it works every single time, but I never got sick of it.
Well, and the reason is because in the opening scene, it works on Snipes, and that's how he knows. That's why I love that scene so much, because he gets hustled by this white guy who rolls into town. This outsider comes into town, immediately hustles him, makes him look like he's a goofball, immediately starts hitting all these shots that he's like, how is this guy hitting this? This guy, I underestimated him. But at the end of that scene, what's so important about it is that Snipes is really mad at his buddy who lent him the cash so that he could do it. His buddy who's like screaming about going to the Sizzler the whole game. And he's like, shut your anorexic, malnutrition, tapeworm having, bohemian diet drinking ass up. He says that and he's screaming at this dude. And it's followed by a huge push in on Snipes' face, huge smirk of respect as James Brown's like I Feel Good hits on the soundtrack. And he's just like, I see what this guy did and I see the vision on it. I bet I could do this with him, with other people. And that's like almost the rest of the movie. The hour of the movie is just them pulling hustles off of that original hustle.
And Snipes is so good at being a cocky shit talker. Like I can't tell. I'm imagining a lot of it was just on the script, but it's just so natural that it feels as if he's kind of going off the dome. It's just endlessly entertaining. And I also like that they kind of choreograph their play styles when they're playing basketball to their personalities. Like Woody is a little bit more reserved and just kind of like shooting and taking passes and everything. And then Snipes is like doing behind the back spin passes and just has a little bit more style to him, to a point where Woody actually gets mad, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, but I love when Harrelson's hustling him and he's straight up like, I've never hit 2 shots in a row like that. I've never hit 3 shots in a row like that. Every single time he's like, it's like the luck of the Irish, except I ain't Irish.
yeah.
Well, it's funny too, like having seen like obviously we see Denzel hoop in He Got Game. I don't think Denzel would have worked as well in this movie, like given everything that you guys said about Wesley Snipes. Like I think he just brought that certain personality and that edge that I don't know Denzel. I don't know if Denzel would have been the right fit for something like this.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I hesitate to say Denzel can't do something because Denzel has proven me wrong 6 million times. But I do agree with you that like
Denzel know I said that.
Friend of the show, Denzel.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do completely I agree. I think Snipes is having so much fun here, and it is a very different performance than I think Denzel would have given to it.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen Snipes kind of have this very like poke and prod, fun, but like mean but charming kind of attitude before, and he's got a real energy to him that's very it's very high energy, and I feel like Denzel would have brought a little bit more of a calm, collected, but still in your face kind of mood. It would have been just very different, but I love the way that Snipes is just animated the entire time and kind of
banter between the two of them
and everything.
Is just so fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. And again, I think just having Woody's character be a little bit more reserved, they really bounce off each other really well, because he's still like, Woody's character is still strong-willed. He's still like saying things back. It's just not as animated as Snipes. And that back and forth.
Yeah, the only time Harrelson
awesome.
gets really mad is when he says white people can't hear Jimmy.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's like, I love Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. And I like too, as that kind of progresses, they get closer, and then he's like, okay, you can hear them. You're starting to hear the music. He's like, yeah, I can hear Jimmy. He's like, no, you can't hear Jimmy yet. We're not getting there yet. We're not that far. Just, yeah, their banter is fantastic. Throughout too, like, I like that eventually Snipes' character uses the very hustle on that he's been using with Woody against him too. Even the way it's portrayed in the film, it's not showing you outright what he's doing. You kind of also want to buy into that their friendship has been kind of solid at this point, and that he wouldn't hustle him. So I like that reveal happens between Rosie and Woody, rather than, you know, he just stumbles upon it or something like that. Rosie,
I do love that there's like a male code, there's rules, there's ethics to hustling. They talk about at one point. He's like, you know, there's no way he could have done that to me, because essentially Snipes just goes in a different neighborhood after they've done a couple of them. They go to a higher stakes one with all the money they've made, and he basically says, you know, we're going to play against these two guys, we can beat them, and he just throws the game against these two guys, and he finds out later those two guys were his friends, and he absolutely took all of his money. And, you know, even briefly, Harrelson gets like that sad jazzy walk home where he's like, I gotta go tell her I'd lost everything we had again, and you know, I gotta find out where I'm sleeping tonight. Like, clearly there's a history between him and the Rosie Perez character as Gloria, where he constantly gambles and loses all of their money. And it actually isn't like, in the very, very, very periphery of the film, they're literally on the run from some Italian mobsters they owe gambling debts to, called the Stucchi brothers. Just long hair, trench coat Italian guys just appearing with guns to chase them around every so often. It's one of the few sort of like tonally odd bits in the movie, because you're like, that feels like a little bit more of a serious plot.
Yeah, and they never make it serious, which is, I mean, I think it's fun, but I agree that it kind of like threatens or hints towards being something a little bit more consequential, and then it doesn't really get there. But I do like the gag that they do at the end, where it's like the one shot in the movie that feels violent because they're faking his death, and then he fakes it, and you're like, nah, okay, we got the picture, you're dead, quote unquote, you paid off the debt, you're all good. So everything ends up being lighthearted regardless of kind of what it threatens to be.
It's kind of crazy, because it's like, you know, watching it back, like all these moments, like even when Marcus Johnson's character like goes, you know, grabs the gun, like it's played for laughs too.
I love that scene,
when he goes to like the convenience store and tries to stick up the guy there. Like you mentioned, the last scene when they kind of fake the death and stuff, it almost feels like, the whole movie kind of, they just keep toggling back and forth between, like, obviously the premise is very lighthearted, but then it does get injected with some of these like serious moments, you know? Yeah. That's why it's like, you know, I thought like just the whole story arc with like where Rosie Perez's character ends up, you know, and stuff, and like you mentioned, Josh, like how she leaves at the end. They could easily have not done that, right? Like just give them like a happy ending type, you know, everybody's learned their lesson, they move on. But
she gave him an ultimatum. She was like, I can't stand the fact that you are clearly a gambling addict, and if you do this even one more time, despite the fact that I've made all the money we need to survive, that's it. And he chooses to do it, right? Like, has a lot more dramatic depth to it than even I think the character that Woody Harrelson could possibly comprehend.
Because it's like a devastating outcome, but then they kind of just move on from it too, right? And like you don't kind of hang on to it.
Yeah, I also think it's a good choice too, because again, they're doing all these things where they kind of threaten a more major consequence, and it doesn't quite ever happen until that scene where she finally goes, goodbye, I love you. And it seems really final. Woody's character doesn't believe in it, obviously, because it's happened so many times.
He's like, I'll see you later. Yeah, I'll be back with the money.
But she doesn't turn back. She doesn't look at him, and then she's gone. And I think that is what ends up being the ultimate consequence of the movie. as opposed to what you might think it would be, which is, you know, the gangsters shooting him dead or whatever.
Also, shout out Rosie Perez, who I think is really good in this movie. I think
like
that there's a
voice of
chance.
reason in this movie. It's
like
awesome.
the girlfriend character in a movie like this is usually such like a thin and underwritten character who doesn't get a whole lot of time, and you could argue that maybe she could have even got a little bit more time in this film. But what she does with her few scenes of like being in this, you know, legitimately kind of sexy rom-com with Woody Harrelson, and her whole subplot about studying the encyclopedias and the almanacs, waiting for the Jeopardy call to come so that she can win their money. Like that's her version of pulling off some sort of like big-brained hustle in the way that he is, but it's a lot like safer of a bet. And by the time she eventually does get on Jeopardy, which in fairness, Woody Harrelson pulls a couple moves with Wesley Snipes in order to make that possible, which he doesn't tell her about. But when she gets on the show, it's one of my favorite sequences in the whole film because it's such an unexpected detour in a movie that feels completely unrelated to it, that just Woody Harrelson's girlfriend gets on Jeopardy and she fucking kills it. And my favorite part is Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson on the sidelines. They're there like they're at like a sporting event, and they're like, yeah, she's like, she's fucking in the zone. Look at her go. She knows every food that starts with Q. This is fucking crazy.
It's a great beat that's real simple and like a kind of a classic comedy beat, but where like she comes out and she's announced and Woody just starts going nuts and then quickly stops because no one else is doing that. I like him bringing the kind of courtside energy to a Jeopardy is awesome.
Love it.
They kept it real too, because you know she obviously was studying the whole time, and you know she's so smart, getting all these different categories. But of course, she does the sports question, and I think the sports question was like, oh, it was the all-time leading rebounder in like NBA history, and of course her answer is Babe Ruth. And I think it stays true to the fact that most great Jeopardy contestants are terrible at sports questions. So I appreciate that little point there.
That is funny. I also love
this movie is just filled with details like that. I love it.
And I love the montage that she gets, like, just, you know, you see her studying for so long, and then you get to see in this scene just everything, you know, her just killing it, and
it all pays off for her, and she's so sweet and so cute that like when it does, you feel so good for her.
Oh yeah, and all the flashes when she's just doing question after question, it's like honestly really fun, and it does kind of remind you of the same rhythm that I think Shelton's trying to emulate when it's when he's showing off a basketball game, trying to show off. It's like this is that exciting moment for her, you know. It's like question after question, shot after shot. So yeah, I loved that scene. It does feel like a little detour, but it's like Rosie is such a lovable actress, and the character that she plays is really incredible too. So
yeah,
I was like, you know what, I don't mind this at all.
And she was so good in Do the Right Thing as well, which is why I assumed she was thrown into this one, and she. I like her little moments of like she gets to kind of probe Harrelson a bit in the way that, you know, it's a little bit of like classic sort of like 90s boyfriend girlfriend, like, you know, little fights that they get into. Yeah. But at the same time, she has like a weird poetry to her at times. I love that line that she gets, which is like straight up feels like it could have been in Bull Durham. This is like the Ron Shelton like sports poetry playbook. When she goes, sometimes you win. Sometimes when you win, you really lose. And sometimes when you lose, you really win. And sometimes when you win or lose, you actually tie. And sometimes when you tie, you actually win or lose. Winning or losing is all one organic mechanism from which one extracts what one needs.
Yeah. But yeah.
And it like totally wraps around Woody Harrelson's head. And I feel like even there's a point where I'm going through it and I'm just like, I don't know that I fully understand it, but there's a truth to it. There's a truth in there.
And I like that it's revealed like he struggles with it so hard for like the majority of this film. I think there's a couple scenes where he's just like, what
and Wesley
the hell
Snipes is
mean?
like, just listen to her.
Yeah.
I don't.
and then at the end, he finally goes, like, when he loses her, he was just like, oh, sometimes when you win, you lose. He's like, it all like comes to you as the mind
I literally
explosion.
Won the game, but I lost my girlfriend. Damn. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. She was a philosopher. So yeah, it's I loved that, and I agree with you. I kind of had those moments too at the beginning where she was saying those things, and I was like, I kind of get what she's saying. It's like a subjective experience winning in some way, but she says it in that way that is almost like purposely confusing, at least for like Woody's character and just the way that they're arguing and in the kind of the moment, just because it's so frantic as they're arguing. But then as that becomes more and more true as the movie goes on, because he has to balance so many things and he has to lose at least one of those things. It's great. Yeah. And she becomes, like I said earlier, she becomes the voice of reason, right? Like she says that to him. She's the one that exposes,
on top of literally
Snipes.
being like their accountant as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's the one that exposes Snipes' hustle to Woody at that time. Like she's the one that goes, hello, he hustled you.
Her and Rhonda having literally negotiating an actual business deal of the two of them kissing and making up and participating in the 2-on-2 tournament is their idea, while the two guys are just like being just resentful of each other in the living room. Although the best detail in that whole scene is that they stop wanting to kill each other for 2 seconds because the basketball game on TV gets really exciting and they go
Meanwhile, the women in the next room are actually figuring out the problems. It's really funny.
And figuring out how both of these guys are going to get the money they need, because they both do need it. Like Wesley Snipes maybe needs it a tiny bit less because he seems a little bit more comfortable. He's not literally on the run owing money to people, but he does need to get his, he does want to give his wife and his kid, a different lifestyle. He wants to move out of their apartment complex and get into a house.
And we even do see that scene where he's trying to be professional, like he's kind of dressed in a professional way, and he's making a kind of a business sell to somebody, and then it's fun to watch him take that character he's playing to sell the business that he has, and then Woody comes up to him and it just goes right back to the kind of courtside demeanor where he's telling him to fuck off, and he's like, you're gonna ruin this for me, and starts insulting him again and everything. There's just that back and forth in his performance, and that moment is great. And also watching Snipes kind of adapt depending on who he's talking to. Like on the court, obviously he's more boisterous and just cocky and whatever, but when he's with his wife, it's actually a lot more just loving, and he's calm and collected. And it kind of just shows like the dynamics of his character, that he, what he does on the court,
the performative ritual
right?
of the court is definitely different than who they are as people.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And what is cool though is like I don't find it to be as different with Woody's character. I find that he has a less like performative thing to him on the court and with Rosie, but he also has a more like kind of unstable lifestyle, it seems, than Snipes too. So it's really interesting character dynamics. I love watching it.
Now, Alex, we wanted to ask you briefly before we get to the big final stuff in Gone on here. How do you feel about the Harrelson and Snipes' play when it slows down and these guys start hitting passes? What do you think of the big move they pull where he like slams it off the backboard instead of going for the layup and gets it right to Harrelson? Do you think you'd see these on the street court?
Definitely not, but I honestly think the way that the movie is set up, like we've talked about, kind of how lighthearted it is, like it really fits, right? Like I think they are able to have a little bit of that boundary to kind of play with. I do see here in my notes, I guess I randomly wrote a lot of unnecessary spins at the basket.
Well, because it looks cool.
Yeah, when the guys are going for the layups, I'm like, I'm not trying to, tell Ron Shelton what to do or tell these hoopers what to do, but how about just a little fundamental layup, like there's no need to put so much sauce on it, especially because you might have some big money on the line here,
Yeah, so, and that is like, I think I might have mentioned it earlier, but there is that part where Woody says that to Snipes, where he's like, "Yo, man, that extra spin back pass was not necessary for the win.
Like, just fucking shoot."
Yeah, like, no need for this razzle dazzle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every once in a while they do some like and one kind of shit, and but I think it's just, I don't know. It's like I don't think they ever go too far with it. It doesn't become like cartoonish or anything. It's just, I think it really ultimately results or is an expression of Snipes' character, where he can't just be the best. He also has to be like the sickest. He's got to be the most stylish,
Yeah.
Well, Harrelson has a very funny way of phrasing that when he's just like, look, the white man wants to win first and the black man wants to look good.
Yeah. And then they have a whole fight about that. Yeah. Yeah, their back and forths are honest in this way that they both like view each other or whatever. And it's it does create this kind of like close bond and connection, but always still has a friction that I find interesting. Like, again, they end with still kind of fighting, even though they're friends and they're about to.
I like that about both
one-on-one.
these movies. We'll talk about it in He Got Game too, but the idea of like you both love this particular thing and you're on top of the world when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's inherently an antagonizing thing in your life and with like people in your life. And like you have to, there is still a competition with this other guy, even when he's your teammate. And the fact that Snipes doesn't approve of all the trash talking he does at that tournament. And I fucking love the guys who are giving out the cash prize at the tournament. The like white execs are like, we need to stop them before we lose our sponsors because they're just getting a little too into it and just saying, off the color things like the mustard is off the hot dog, you big corn-fed mule.
Yeah,
you just see like the white guy with the glasses in the corner just being like, oh, they can't say that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to watch that montage of Woody just shit talking in that tournament. It's awesome.
Yeah, that stuff's good, and it ends up leading to, like they win that tournament, and they still have an ego pissing contest, which is where it gets the title of the name from. When Wesley Snipes' character tells Harrelson that white men cannot jump, you cannot dunk this, and he literally bets all of their winnings from the entire day. It's the dumbest decision a character could possibly make, and it's the reason essentially that, Perez should have just instantly dumped him on the spot, and she kind of does. She does leave, and he wins her back by getting her the Jeopardy show and doing a little song where he serenades her with some of the specific lyrics about her weird thing about, when I'm thirsty, I want you to sympathize with me, not bring me a glass of water.
Yeah.
I forgot about that scene. That's a crazy scene too.
Such a wild scene.
That was a crazy scene. Yeah.
Oh man,
I felt like we were detouring into something else entirely different when she started going off on that. Yeah.
But it's so funny that comes back as like in the lyrics of his song that he sings to her on the guitar.
Yeah.
When he's trying to win her back, and that's what ends up being. He needs to still get all that money back, but so she gives him $2,000 to go and get a job, and he goes instead. Actually, Wesley Snipes got robbed and lost all of his money, so I need to pay him back for what he did to me. And we're going to pull one last hustle on these guys we know that we can beat. And she basically, I love at first that she's kind of entertained. She goes, what is this, a macho dick thing? Can I watch? I felt like that kind of summarized the movie a little bit. And then she goes, actually, if you gamble my money, like, that's just it. Goodbye.
And there's an extra layer of sadness to it too, with like how excited she is before Snipes approaches Woody for this last kind of hustle, where she's like, I'm going to get acting classes. I think I could make up to like 80 grand because I'm good enough at this Jeopardy thing to do. She can
be good at Jeopardy and then like get on a soap or something like that. Right. Like she has such, achievable goals.
Yeah. She was going from running from gangsters to now actually maybe having a chance to achieve her dream. And Anne gives money to Woody so that he can at least have a foundation of a life and maybe start building. And they purposely have that so that when Snipes comes and that offer is given to Woody, it just becomes like that much more heart-wrenching, because you see the hope, you see that possible future, and then it's just taken away because he has an obligation to his friend, I suppose.
Yeah, he kind of owes him in a way, but at the same time, it is serving his gambling addiction that he wants to do again anyway.
Yeah.
And, they go and do it. They hit the high. They win the game. They do the crazy no-look alley-oop pass into the white boy dunk.
Let's go.
And for once, he didn't lose money, and he doubled the money, and he still lost, is how he frames it. And it's all because Wesley Snipes says you didn't listen to the woman, man.
No, I'm glad you brought up that dunk. I do come away with this feeling like this movie did a lot to advocate for just white guys on basketball courts. Like I feel like at the time it probably did help advance that, the respect of just white people at street ball.
It does feel like kind of like with all it's comedy and its lighthearted tone and everything. It does feel like a very connective film. Like it just it feels just incredibly friendly, and if it's like a genuinely heartwarming film and depiction of friendship. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, without sacrificing the consequences of he made a bad choice and lost his girlfriend. Yes. But at the same, so there's a bittersweetness to that happens to him, but he still has made a friend, and he is going right back to one-on-one and telling you mama jokes with Wesley Snipes.
Yeah. At the end, all you got is your bros, man. That's it, you know.
Yeah. If we're pivoting towards the reductive rating round, which for you, Alex, where we remove all the words and all the nuance and reduce the movie between a number between 1 and 5 as a bit of a rating, but it's also become sort of like final statements or any quotes or anything in your notes that you feel like we didn't hit. We just quickly do here at the end. But for me, this is a very solid 4. I have a really good time with this film. I do think that Ron Shelton's love of just sports in general, as being a college basketball player and a minor league baseballer, is so apparent when you watch his films. And again, I think how warm he is, how funny he is, how focused he is on working class stories, how focused he is on, you know, sort of like gender dynamics and race dynamics, and actually kind of weaving in some of the complexity of what he saw in his experiences playing with the pure love of this community and the love of, you know, the rituals as Jamie highlighted, and doing so in the fun environment of like a movie you're already familiar with. Like you could pitch it to a guy and it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a gambling movie, and it's got a little bit of that, you know, that tension to it, but it's just a lower stakes, really compassionate, really hangout version of a movie like that. So I get a lot out of this. I think that Harrelson and Snipes, and shout out Perez, I think all three of them are fantastic. I enjoy all of the character work that they're doing. I enjoy some of the weird sort of sports philosophizing or poetry that comes up through Perez. I enjoy the sort of macho ego pissing contest, trash talking shit and the bravado and the banter that these guys get into. The Venice Beach street ball and like motel location work, I think, is really authentic and really realistic, and just the general desperation and personality that I think makes its way into the movie. It overpowers anything that I think maybe if you've seen narratively, you know, you're not picking up on new stuff too much here. I think just how invested he is in and authentically realizing this community and this environment is such a big thing, and throwing in goofy details like having Marquise Johnson go grab a gun from his glove compartment, and it does feel like a Spike Lee moment in the movie where he goes over and, you know, tells the convenience store clerk to give him all his money so he can go back to the court and bet with it, and the guy goes, "Dude, I know you." Yeah, it's Raymond. You're Raymond, are you not? And the fact that it's just like everybody knows each other, and he goes, he's not even that mad about it. He's like, "Look, how about I buy your gun off of you, and then you can go and use that cash to do it." And he's like, "Now you're robbing me," because he's undercutting him on how much the gun is worth.
I forgot about that little side quest there. That's an amazing little part.
Like that's just such like an eccentric and specific detail based on Ron Shelton's like own experience of, again, going up to a court and finding out that the entire court was empty because some guy threatened to go get a gun. So, you know, some of the specific details in that I think are just really strong. So yeah, that's why it's in the 4 territory for me.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a 4 out of 5. This is actually the first time I watched both of these movies. So I've been meaning to for a while. I just never got around to it. But yeah, I love its kind of lighthearted tone, but I still feel like it's pretty honest about its gender and race dynamics. Doesn't dive too deep into them, but I think deep enough that you still get kind of a worldview of each character, and it still doesn't sacrifice its kind of lighthearted comedy. Still doing that. I love the early like 90s aesthetics, kind of like the late 80s spilling over a little bit with the like super colorful outfits, and even like the details of the outfits, like Snipes constantly wearing 2 tank tops at the same time. Just
awesome.
Stuff like
2
that.
different colored tank tops. Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Just so sick. I just love the fashion.
That's how I'm showing up to pickleball for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the relationship between Woody and Rosie is fantastic. I love that she's the voice of reason a lot of the time, and just like teaching him lessons that he doesn't learn really until the end of the film, and he's like has the callbacks on those lessons. I think is kind of it's kind of adorable in a way. There was this one last line I thought was really funny. It's when they're talking about listening to your woman or whatever, and then Woody is like, okay, I'll listen, but if I listen, do I have to agree with her? And it's just like, no, that's just a good start.
Just start with the listening part.
It's just very funny. It still kind of dives into their dynamics as friends and the gender politics and everything, or the dynamics. So yeah, I think it's great. I love the way that the basketball is shot. It at least appears very natural.
Shot by Russell Boyd, by the way. I forgot to mention Peter Weir's cinematographer, who shot fucking Picnic at Hanging Rock and like The Last Wave and Master and Commander. Like really artistic cinematographer.
Yeah, that's awesome. It looks fantastic. I mean, the way that they shoot Venice is so cool. Yeah, great film. 4 out of 5.
Yeah, for you, Alex.
I agree with everything you guys said, but I guess I'm a grumpy Asian, marker. So 3 out of 5 for me.
Okay.
But I do think, my thing too is like, I think a 3 out of 5 doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. I think I enjoy
definitely
a lot of movies in that range, and I think, just even talking about it through with you guys, like I do have a better appreciation of just, what this movie was able to capture, and just, how it was able to kind of maintain that tone, but also kind of veer into a bit of kind of, the serious side, the consequences of things. And yeah, I will not be watching.
There was too many Yo Mama jokes. That was
what it would have been a 4 out of 5. But all those unnecessary spins at the basket really just like fundamentally really just bothered me.
Love it.
One too many alley-oops.
Yeah, one too many alley-oops. I'm an old school guy. James Naismith type of vibe, and I'm glad you guys didn't make me watch the remake, because I didn't realize they did a remake of this movie.
I never even watched it because I was like concerned. I was like, I don't think that I'm gonna enjoy that.
I feel like I would not like that. I was actually intending on watching it just for curiosity's sake before this episode, but I just didn't get around to it. But yeah, I saw the reviews. They didn't look nearly as good.
Like I saw Jack Harlow once in that Doug Liman movie with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, The Instigators, and I was like, Jack Harlow, not sure about his acting acumen, at least in comparison to Woody Harrelson, for sure. So I was like, I don't know about that one. But that is going to wrap it up here, though, for White Men Can't Jump. You're going to want to stick around, though, because we're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about Spike Lee and Denzel and He Got Game.
I ain't no baby no more.
Dear Lord, deliver Jesus to us.
People make mistakes. People veer off the path. So what? God forgives them. When will you?
Never.
I bet he can finally beat you.
One-on-one, and this will be the most important decision
In your life.
Don't blow it.
All right, we are back, and we are talking He Got Game, the 1998 sports drama written and directed by Spike Lee and starring Denzel Washington alongside then NBA All-Star and future Hall of Famer 20 years later, Ray Allen, as father and son Jake and Jesus. Jake is in prison for having killed his wife or committed manslaughter against Jesus' mother, and he is given a few weeks parole, or maybe a week parole, and an offer of a reduced prison sentence if he can convince his college-age top NBA prospect son to play for the New York Governor's alma mater. This is somehow only our second time talking about legendary New York writer-director Spike Lee, who was one of the biggest American directors of the 90s, following his string of Brooklyn set or Atlanta set dramas, splitting time between the two places he kind of grew up in, that were just, even at the time, just radically personal and colorful and political and so energetically directed, including his debut rom-com She's Gotta Have It, his black college frat and sorority homecoming musical School Days, his autobiographical family melodrama Crooklyn with Delroy Lindo essentially playing his struggling pianist father and who he had in real life, and of course Do the Right Thing, which we already brought up, which is just one of the indisputably perfect movies you talk to anybody about, and they will be like, that's just an incredible movie, especially just with how Spike Lee managed to turn just like these casual, everyday class and race realities and tensions of like this hot summer hangout day on a sweaty block in Brooklyn, and just slowly escalates them to like just this sweltering, tragic, political pressure cooker. And just there's so much humanity and history, and it's a movie that just gets more relevant every year, very unfortunately. But this is our first time talking about him in a while, not since Jason was on the show, and this is our fifth time though talking about the equally legendary Denzel Washington, who was collaborating with Spike Lee here for the third time with this film in particular, having worked with him on his jazz musician drama Mo Better Blues, shortly after his breakout roles in things like Cry Freedom and Glory, which got him an Oscar nomination and an Oscar win for supporting actor, and then securing his first lead actor nomination on Spike Lee's historical epic biopic, Malcolm X. So, after that, Denzel was one of the biggest movie stars in the world. He did Philadelphia with Demi. He did Crimson Tide with Tony Scott, Devil in a Blue Dress with Carl Franklin. Just an unbelievable actor, unbelievable run of movies. And apparently the story goes, because I didn't know this until watching a contemporaneous interview with Spike Lee, because there wasn't a whole lot of information out there about the movie. The idea for Spike Lee had been floating around about making a basketball movie for a really long time, because he had produced Love and Basketball, and he basically wrote this film in his spare time because his wife at the time was basically like, you haven't written like a personal movie in a while. Like, go back and just go to scratch, make a movie like you did like prior to getting studio movies, and just, make something, that's from deep inside you, essentially. And so he wrote this movie. He sent it to Denzel just as a friend, because he hadn't even been thinking about him while he was writing it. He wasn't sure that if Denzel would even have interest in it. And Denzel apparently instantly was like, that's mine. Like, I want that role. Like, you wrote this? This is sick. Like, and like the next week they were putting the money in the pre-production together after sending him the script. That was just the level of star power that Denzel had to get something made. And it opened up the possibility for Spike Lee too, to getting more of the NBA involvement that he wanted to it, because they were going to have a big enough budget and they were going to have connections. And I don't know if you know this, Alex, how many different people he auditioned because he wanted an actual NBA player for the Sun. Kobe.
Yes.
Top of the list.
Yes, I read about Kobe, and I think Kobe initially was supposed to be in the movie, but this was when he first, he was, first couple of years in the NBA, and I think he was coming off a really embarrassing exit in the playoffs.
Yes.
It was like Lakers Jazz, and I think he shot a couple air balls or something like that, like early in his career, and then I think he backed out of it.
Well, yeah, because he was like, basically for Spike Lee, he was like, you need to dedicate your entire off season to the production of this movie. Like, it's a big role. It's not like a cameo role.
Which is what Jordan did for Space Jam. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was what he told him. And Kobe was basically like, look, I actually need to really focus in my off season for the exact off season you want me for, so I can't do this movie. Then they looked at Tracy McGrady, they looked at Allen Iverson, they looked at a bunch of different guys. They ultimately landed on Ray Allen. I guess when Lee was courtside for like a Bucks-Knicks game, and he just was incredible. Like, I like this guy's vibe. I don't know. He hadn't considered him, and he was like, this is the guy. And the guy couldn't act at all, but he wanted his natural personality and kind of physicality. And unlike White Men Can't Jump, where they were like, we're going to train actors to be ballers, he was like, I want a baller who I can hopefully, coach to act, and who could possibly be a better acting coach than fucking Denzel Washington, who's going to be on set with you every single day.
Would have loved to see a version of this movie with Denzel and Allen Iverson.
That'd be interesting.
I feel like out of all the names that you mentioned, Iverson's probably the one that I'm most curious about.
Yeah, apparently
he definitely has like the backstory that would be really interesting to see him work through, because I saw a couple of people on Letterboxd actually compare this film to the Sports Illustrated article about Allen Iverson, where he talks about the fact that, he told his aunts and uncles that his talent was God's compensation to the Iversons for all their pain and loss that they had experienced and all that kind of stuff. And he viewed his talent as a form of like cosmic payback, in a way. And it's funny because it's basically kind of the theme of the movie in a way.
Yeah.
It's Denzel Washington teaching his kid how to be the best in a very abusive fashion, but for him it's a sacrifice and a sin he's willing to commit and atone for, to be like, you're going to be the guy in this family who's going to get out and like live the life I wanted to live at one point. And so it's a very that's sort of the complex emotional relationship between those characters,
which also results in Jesus kind of having that constant pressure, like being the best that there is, or at least in the kind of like the upcoming the upcoming players.
Naming him Jesus is also fucking crazy. Like just flat out. Talk about pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they really accent that in the movie where it's constantly like friends and family members, specifically his uncle, it seems, is kind of gearing towards using him once the money comes in. And they're
played by the
like,
great Bill Nunn from Do the Right Thing there too. Radio Raheem himself is like, yeah, let me wet my beak, son, for taking care of you and your sister all these years.
And they start like, preemptively buying things before the money's even in the bank account. And because they all think that there's kind of this guarantee. And it is interesting for Jesus to kind of wrestle with that and be like, I know that, Michael Jordan in the montage is saying, I've got game. So clearly there's something here and I'm probably going to get signed and I'm probably going to be a success, but there's no guarantee. And that kind of pressure to, basically take care of your entire friends and family circle is it's an unbelievable pressure, especially for, I think he's like 18 or something like that. Right? Like I think he's gearing towards college. So he's got to be.
Yeah, he's a high school senior, but he has to sign his letter of intent for which college he's going to go to. And which is obviously a huge decision for every, high school basketball prospect. Like that's the thing that's really exceptional, I think, about this movie, because it has so much interest in the industry of basketball and the lives of people who make their way into it. And like what I really love about this in particular is that Spike Lee, as a guy, has a very complicated relationship to basketball because he clearly loves the sport. He adores the sport. Similarly to Shelton, just look at all those lovingly photographed slow motion montages and music videos, and the fact that he sets it to, like Aaron Copland ballet music, like these hugely operatic orchestras. He's like, this is like a genuinely beautiful dance-like game to me, and it's poetry in motion, as another character calls it. Like Spike Lee believes that clearly and shoots it that way. But he also sees basketball and professional sports in America, as includes the NFL, other sports as well, for the inherent industry exploitation of the young boys who play it and the young black boys who play it specifically. Because Alex, have you seen Hoop Dreams?
Yes, yeah, Hoop Dreams. Yeah, I mean that's the
movie
right?
about this subject. And I think about that a lot because it came out in 1994. It's by Steve James. It's essentially about these inner city, black kids in Chicago going to the white suburban schools in order to get into their gifted basketball youth programs and hopefully make it to the NBA and lift their families out of poverty. It's the it's literally the documentary version of some of the themes we see here. Yeah. But he filmed the kids for 5 years during the process, and neither of them made it. And that was something that I think was something that he wasn't sure. Like he could have been making the documentary if he followed them, and one of them did and became a pro ball player. That might have been interesting. But the fact that neither of them make it is so heartbreaking, and it becomes this depiction of just how hard it is for these young kids to actually pull off this dream, and how tantalizing it is. And it's quite famous for filming a real life scene of Spike Lee giving a lecture at a college to some of the prospects in that movie. He literally goes to like NYU or whatever, and he goes, nobody cares about you. You're black. You're a young male. All you're supposed to do is deal drugs and mug women. The only reason why you're here is that you can make their team win, and if their team wins, these schools get a lot of money. So that's a quote from Spike Lee to the real college prospect kids in that film. And so I that's what I get out of this movie. Like, it's such a clear-eyed statement that he drops on them. And he also goes, but I understand the love of the game, and I understand the dream, and I understand why it's so attractive and why you would be interested in it. But there's a financial and emotional reality to all of this. And so, that's what ends up making this movie so, I think, moving to me. He loves this sport. He's also critical of it and its relationship to his own community. And he captures both of those things, like wrestling with each other at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things I love, I have kind of like a love-hate relationship with like Spike Lee movies, I feel, because we can go through the list of films, like, Do the Right Thing is great. I love 25th Hour. I love a lot of his movies. And with Spike, like, there's always an intention with his messaging, right? Like there's always... Where I feel like sometimes, like, I wasn't a huge fan of like Bamboozled. I feel like he kind of just like maybe kind of got lost in trying to deliver the message, and the fact that it like ended up not being like a great movie. But it's like with He Got Game, I feel like this was the perfect canvas for him. Him being such a huge basketball fan, and him doing this movie in the late 90s as the money was really coming in for these basketball players in real life. Like, I think probably younger people today don't, remember that, like, the NBA wasn't a big deal, like in the 80s. It didn't really kind of blow up and become this like $1 billion enterprise until the 90s. And like a lot of kids were getting exploited, or a lot of kids were trying to go this route. And, like you said, like the examples in Hoop Dreams, like they weren't able to kind of make it. And there's just so many people depending on you, right? Like it's like it's the scene, in this movie where he goes on the ride along, and he's getting told, Ray Allen's character is getting told that, like, hey, the worst thing that's gonna happen is not like the woman, all this stuff. It's like suddenly everybody's like your family, like suddenly everybody's asking for something. And I thought those points were drilled in very well, and I thought that like Spike was the perfect director for this movie, and I thought Denzel's the perfect actor to kind of play that role. And then the premise itself is just insane too. It's like you get out of jail for
crazy.
You get out of jail for 1 week. You go to this like seedy ass motel in like Coney Island.
Sometimes I think about that. Like the log line itself is so ridiculous, and somehow he never makes me question it. I'm just like, I feel like I'm in comfortable hands that this is something that would actually happen.
Yeah, and they got those 2 cops like checking in on him like here and there throughout the week as he's trying to get his get Ray Allen to sign like the letter of intent to go to the school. But it's like, man, they could have played this countdown thing like for way more. I feel like, because like the days were counting down, right? For like he had the 7 days or whatever.
Yeah, he's still there's some a couple things that I feel like he stretches a little bit of the reality, but there's these moments that he's clearly like critiquing the system itself. Like at the beginning when the warden is handing him this kind of this contract so that he can get out of jail earlier, there's really still no guarantee. It's kind of like, I'll work with the people, but don't worry, we'll get what you need to get out earlier if you get this signing from your son. And then by the end, I mean, they don't even give it to him because he didn't do it the right way or whatever, which feels much more intentional than how they portray it. Like it feels as if that was almost like their plan the whole time in a sense. But there's a lot more weight to this movie, I find, obviously. Like it's like we were saying, it's more of a melodrama than I mean much more than White Man Can't Jump, because Denzel, even as a pretty a very strong character, he still has this kind of mentor aspect to him, but he's incredibly imperfect, and there's as his past is revealed and kind of the flaws are more revealed, he becomes just such a unique and like deep character. There's just so many different directions that I feel his character
you can
goes
see
in.
what he liked about the role, because you can see that Spike Lee is putting in like every aspect of like his own complex feelings about this sport, where he goes, it is kind of the father's responsibility to get his kid to be as successful as possible, but how far is going too far, and is it going too far in the world of this sport? And there's something about making Denzel eventually, in the details, we see that he's a bit of a drunk. He's an abusive father. He is a coach that pushes things too far on his son, but also you're sympathetic to this guy who views himself as kind of like a symptom of a world where this is like the only path for him and his son as he sees it. It's like, he needs to be the best by any means necessary. And that combative relationship both poisons their love of the game, because both of them love the game. They both independently play it of each other. I love that how the movie opens and closes with the very similar sequence. But like, it's literally the 2 guys just practicing shots and, to Aaron Copland classical music and just like golden hour imagery of Ray Allen, shooting 3-pointers, and just great use of slow motion and shadows and like portrait photography of these players like looking into the camera and stuff like that. And these guys clearly have like a deep bond with this game, but at the same time it's like a sore spot in their actual personal relationship, because it's not just a bonding tool, it was also like a physical sharpening tool against his son too, right? So now it's like, does he hate his dad? Does he love his dad? Does he hate this game? Does he love this game? It's all a swirl.
And when they finally, like, there's a couple times where they are playing against each other, specifically, I guess, when he's a kid and there's that kind of like abusive flashback. And
those
then
flashbacks are
afterwards-
crazy. Denzel is like killing that kid.
Oh yeah, it's wild. And it feels as if like their one-on-one is more of like their version of like a fist fight in a sense. It's kind of like it's their way of expressing themselves towards each other, but also there's like an aggression kind of allowed on the court in a way, so they can kind of hash out some of those feelings as they're playing. And I found that to be really interesting. It's like, I think this, whether it's on purpose or not, it feels like it really expresses this, how like basketball itself, because it, especially with like 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, it's so it's such a personally expressive sport. Like everyone kind of has their own style. Obviously there's fundamentals, but just the way that people move and pass and everything is still particular to them, or even how they get inside your head. There's always like this changing dynamic to it depending on like who you're up against. And I think that that's really interesting to watch, especially in this context when you have a lost father and son relationship to be the dynamic. So
yeah, no, I think like you were saying too, Jamie, it's like, especially that one-on-one, that kind of prolonged one-on-one scene that they have at the end when Ray Allen beats him. And, it's like Denzel's character gets off to a pretty quick start. It's like their relationship just kind of bleeds right onto the court, right? Like the way they're talking to each other, the way that there's a certain disrespect. There's a certain kind of, hatred, towards each other, for what Denzel did. Like, I thought that was really well done. And I got to shout out Denzel too. Like, this guy gets out of jail. He got his little sleeveless, top with the t-shirt going. Unc's got like
the Jordans.
Unc goes to Foot Locker, gets a pair of Jordans. He's like, yo, give me a pair of the 13s, and he's got like ankle braces on and stuff, like looking crazy wash. But then, this guy's making all the jumpers, so respects. Yeah,
I do that.
Yeah, I didn't want to necessarily maybe get into it this early, but I have to highlight while we're talking about that scene, by the way, that scene is pure Denzel magic, because that scene, as scripted, was Ray Allen fucking kills him 12-0. Nothing. He doesn't let the dad get anything. That's what was scripted. Denzel came in and Denzel said it would be more interesting if the dad puts up a fight, in my opinion, because he was so into this character.
Yeah.
And so he practiced 4 weeks without telling either Spike Lee or Ray Allen. And he caught him by surprise on the set day and just started sinking buckets on him for real. And that's why you can say Ray Allen's actually confused, because at one point Ray Allen like looked to Spike Lee and was just like, dude, it's scripted that like I win. What's he doing? And Spike Lee's like, you want me to fucking give Denzel a note?
Acting,
fucking
baby.
play him.
That's incredible.
Fucking beat him. You're the best, dude.
Performing is what he's doing, and we're not stopping him. Yeah.
That's
So
incredible.
all of that stuff of him trash talking Ray Allen and being like, yeah, who taught you that, son?
Yeah.
Dude.
All that, all him doing laps around Ray Allen, all that shit, that's improvised.
And that's amazing too, because I love that scene where Denzel is like, he's still trying to be a mentor and a father, but he knows he's kind of failed in a way, but he still brings it up. Like he's bringing up basically that past flashback scene that we get where he's like, oh, I taught you that, and then he does something that, he like does some like crazy layup on his son or
I didn't
whatever,
teach you
and
that
he's
one.
like, I didn't teach you that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like bringing up this like kind of like, there's still things that I could teach you, son, like that kind of thing. But then simultaneously Jesus is like just trying to prove to his father that he doesn't even need him. He's like, I didn't need you from the beginning. I've done this all by myself in a way, even though, he did teach him a lot. But I think at this point, he has such a resentment towards him. So yeah, that whole thing is incredible. And honestly, like Ray Allen's performance, like knowing, especially that detail, I didn't know that detail, having him kind of change the way he's going to play the dynamic of the scene in the middle of that shoot that day is really impressive for someone that was only, acting, like even just being coached acting for 8 weeks, and now he has to kind of work with Denzel on the spot. And
yeah, I mean, I think
dynamic.
Ray Allen's acting ability is a huge sore spot for a lot of people when it comes to this movie, because
I don't think it's bad.
he is.
I mean,
he lost. I think the tough one was when he first sees Denzel. When Denzel goes to the house and is chilling with his younger daughter, and that's a big moment, right, where Ray Allen comes home, sees that he's out of jail, And that's like a big scene where I feel like he didn't hold up. And again, I'm trying to like give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not an actor, but it's like in that scene, in that moment, like he kind of takes me out of it because
there's definitely
it's
moments where I think he's a little stiff and he's a little amateurish as an actor, no doubt. I do find myself usually by the end of the film like moved by his performance still, and I think and I'm not sure if it's just the work that Spike Lee and what Denzel are doing and giving him this environment of feeling, but and also giving him a lot of like more wordless sequences where you just get to see him play, and he's clearly like amazing.
I think him and Rosario Dawson are really good together. I think they have really good chemistry in this movie.
Yeah, I think they're back and forth when they're finally they're on the bench and they're really talking about their split in a sense, and like what his future is compared to what her future is going to be. I think that he finds some truth in whatever performance he's trying to give off in that. I think that's probably his best performance aside from when he's going up against Denzel on the court. I think for me, I feel like he's probably just natural on the court in a way, right? It's like probably where he feels at home in a sense, and is probably able to channel a bit more of a character just because he's so comfortable there. But I think he does really well playing off of Dawson for sure.
Yeah, I mean he does well, and I also think that like Spike Lee gives him, you know, not to be like corny about it, but like he gives him the opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, he's putting him in the right spots. Like he's not. Yeah. I don't think he's asking too much of him. You know.
Yes.
Exactly. Like there are moments where like the emotional power of a scene is not necessarily reliant on Ray Allen nailing his line delivery. It's on like a flashback cut mid conversation where that's like the sucker punch of emotion of the scene. And like Lee, I think knows that, and he knows to be, you know, like there even the early on, like I mean he was always good at doing these kind of eccentric and experimental style choices when it came to just like shooting and cutting stuff. But like I was thinking about like that lyrical bit of cross-cutting between, you know, obviously the both of them taking practice shots while he's in the sort of concrete Attica prison yard, and he's doing it, you know, just in street ball, and connecting them both sort of cosmically kind of through this ritual. And then it even continues through his conversation with the prison warden played by Ned Beatty, where he invites him into the, you know, office to discuss the New York's governor's love of basketball and his offer to give his son this letter of intent to enroll, blah, 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 blah. But when he's doing that mid-conversation, that's where the scenes of him coaching his kid and that thorny dynamic comes in. It's like it's hitting him these impressionistic moments of what he did to his son, and they're trying to be like, you know, they think that obviously his son will listen to him, and he's not telling them, yeah, my son kind of fucking hates my guts because I'm in here for committing manslaughter against his mother, and also in a drunken abusive rage where I was just like hammering him really, really hard on the basketball court. So they don't obviously realize that. They just go, oh, a son will listen to his father. But it's through those impressionistic moments that come out where he really does start to layer that in. And even, you know, go ahead.
Oh, I just pretty much piggybacking off of like what you were saying about his Spike Lee style in general, I think sells this movie in such an incredible way, and he does it so many times. Like it's a thing that you've seen in every Spike Lee movie where he kind of does that. It's like someone's speaking about something, a subject, and then he kind of flashes to almost a montage of those things while it's happening simultaneously, and it's a really great way of connecting an image to the subject. And he does it in different ways that I love in this movie. Like even the intro where he's kind of showing, like, first it's just one guy, you know, shooting shots at a court by himself, and then, you know, the court kind of evolves, and then eventually it's 2-on-2, and then eventually it's full teams. He's kind of just showing.
I love the dude playing barn ball.
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, like just showing all the different ways that you can play this game, and it's just like how universal it is in a sense. And then he has the montage of when Ray Allen's getting the warning of like what's to come. It's like, you know, you could get involved in like even if you don't make it out of here, you could get involved in gangs and drugs. Women can be a distraction if you're not dating in the right mindset. And then we already mentioned, but like his family popping up and asking for money. And while he's saying all these things, it's like those examples are coming up on screen, like people just looking into the camera and being like, hey, could I, I need some money for rent. And we've always been so close and all that kind of thing. And
an intense close-up shot of like someone doing heroin or something like that, or even the sex montage of all that he throws into there.
I really like that one. I can't remember the context of the scene. I'd have to look in my notes. Maybe one of you guys can remind me, but there's kind of like a promo for a team that he does where it's this cool thing where each player kind of says
when it's like the Lincoln High School basketball team. And they're all introducing themselves, right?
And they do this
and it literally comes up with the graphics about their height and like their background.
But they're saying it to the camera, and then at first you're kind of like, okay, this is almost like documentary style, and then he does another kind of Spike Lee flash where all 5 of them are just looking at the camera, but they're slow-mo dribbling and like going through their legs. And then he goes to the next player. And so there's this constant back and forth of like, this feels real, like a reality he's capturing, but then he still has his style in there to kind of make it more cinematic, I guess.
I want to shout out to the hilarity of the school names, Big State. And then later on, when
Abraham Lincoln High,
and when he goes to visit Tech U, it's just Tech U.
I
was like, it's like in those like back in the day when you play like Super Nintendo, it's like you play Ken Griffey baseball. It's like none of the real players' names. It's like just like default names.
Totally.
That was amazing. And like, we talked about Ray Allen's acting. I gotta say, man, the best NBA player acting in this movie was from Rick Fox, man. When Rick Fox walks him around campus, somehow every girl's coming up to him, kissing him. I'm like, this is crazy.
Every white woman comes out to make out with him.
And then he's just giving him the little spiel, sets him up, with a couple girls and stuff like that. And I mean,
brings
Rick Fox,
in Coach Billy Sunday, played by John Turturro.
I remember Rick Fox from like HBO, from Oz. He was on Oz for a little bit.
He's been in some stuff, right? Like I thought, he looked familiar. I knew I've seen his face. But also, I knew he was a basketball player too, so I couldn't remember what movies I saw him in. But yeah, he is good. He's very natural on camera, very charismatic.
Yeah,
and he's really funny in that scene too. I mean, it's just like showing you all of the just like the dumb male fantasy thing of it all, where it's just like, come here, man,
but it's like dialed up, dialed up to like 11, like it's like the most extreme version of it.
They literally hired some porn stars and like put them in a college dorm and is like, okay, have some fun. Now you're gonna come to Tech U, right? Like that's how this works. Like that's the Spike Lee thing that he's doing here. And I think, Jamie, you were kind of alluding to it, but like the idea of like tackling subject matter that is very real, is very authentic, he has an emotional relationship to. He's literally in a documentary about this subject, but also being like, I'm going to exaggerate this to make my point in the way that I do. Like, as Alex was pointing out, like sometimes he can be didactic and extreme and, really push the message he wants to. And so there are moments in this where you can feel him subjectively bending the reality in order to heighten his point like that. And that's, I think, a classic example of that. And I think that's going to work for people, or it's not. Like, maybe it'll rub you the wrong way. Like I personally, if I have like maybe something that doesn't totally work for me about this, it's giving Denzel the Mila Jovovich subplot with Mrs. Resident Evil herself.
Do you think it's just not dove into deep enough? Like, is that kind of
there's like 3 scenes. They do the whole redemption in like 3 scenes, right? Like
I mean, if we're comparing the 2 movies, this is just the one where I definitely, if you wanted to critique the way that this one writes women where the other one writes women, I would listen to you a little bit more, because I think Rosie Perez is actually a really interesting character. And in this one, the idea that, like, I've seen people comment on this, but like the idea that like the mother is a dead saint, there's the abused prostitute next door, and then there is Rosario Dawson, who is like, is very manipulative as a girlfriend. Now, I do think that, in fairness to Lee, he does give some of these characters moments of a little bit more shading. Like when Rosario Dawson's girlfriend as Lala, when we're first introduced to her, it's in this really negative light of like, she's trying to get Jesus to sign with a sports agent, go straight to the pros, that she is cheating on him with, and like sign with his.
Love the way that
company.
Lee portrays that though, like where she's just on the phone in kind of a center frame, and it's just like hands going over her face.
The hands come up while she's on the phone, and she's saying, "I love you." Yeah, it actually is a really it's a well-directed moment in terms of like this betrayal that she's doing. Yeah, but it's a really she's painted in a really horrible light, and especially when they try to seduce him with mansions and Ferraris and all that kind of stuff.
I do like, and like when eventually like that stuff, because I agree. At first I'm like, oh, she's cheating on him. It's kind of like you just write her off a little bit, and I don't think you necessarily want that. But I do like later when he does the threesome or whatever, and then he's unwilling to say anything, and she's like, yeah, I did cheat, but at least I'm willing to say it, like that kind of thing.
And also she kind of goes like, look, I kind of felt like you were gonna leave and I was gonna get left behind, and so like this was my attempt at like a survivalist hustle to be like, what, you thought you were gonna marry me and take me with you? Like, no, like this was
she's just, like, I've read about this story 1,000 times, like you're going to leave me because there's a bigger life to be had. And so and
with the Jovovich stuff, for me, I like that. What I like so much about what Denzel is doing in terms of his work is he's making you sympathize with a very flawed character.
Definitely.
And he is your heart kind of breaks for this guy and this level of atonement he thinks that he's doing, without shaving off the fact that he has some pretty hard and like edges to him as a character. And like he killed his wife, and it is laid out in the flashback as obviously like a
very quick impulsive accident.
But it was during drunken domestic violence.
Yes.
You know, it's hard, it's a hard thing to excuse, especially for the kid. And it's one of those things where I find part of the Mila Jovovich thing is to just be like, but see, he is like capable of like a sensitive relationship, and I think that that's, you know, I don't know that you needed to go that far in order to tell me that. I got that kind of out of Denzel's performance. I didn't need him to, you know, have this whole subplot about it, especially where Mila Jovovich is just basically an abused prostitute from like a pimp who is just like the stereotype of like a guy who abuses his girls kind of thing. And so like that's the stuff where I felt like if there was trimming that could have been done, maybe that could have been the stuff that you drop, because everything else with Denzel I love him trying to get back into his kids' lives. I love him, the fact that he also named his daughter Mary too, but like that first scene where he goes back and is interacting with the daughter, who has a bit more of a, you know, less resentful relationship because he didn't coach her at basketball, and he asks her, what are you studying? And she's like, cells, and he's like, yeah, me too. You know.
I also like the detail that she also is more forgiving because she wasn't in the room when it happened. She was sleeping. So true. There's kind of like this separation that she can't quite wrap her head around in a way. I think the small details are good. I agree with you that I think the Mila what's her name? Jovovich. Mila Jovovich plotline is a little bit, it's just not developed enough. And I think that it does go into a little bit of, you know, cliche. I think all you really needed was just the dynamic between Denzel and the cops that are constantly monitoring him in that really shitty hotel or whatever. So I feel like that could have been enough.
Yeah, like I don't mind getting into like like him trying to adapt to being in the outside world again, totally. Even if temporarily, like the prison rehab stuff. Like I think that stuff's all interesting. I do think that just the one subplot is included because they want to be like, well, see, the guy who killed his wife doesn't like just hate women.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a studio exec looked at the script and was like, yo, this Denzel guy is pretty evil. By the way that he's being portrayed, like we have to slap in some kind of redemption,
romance,
some kind of romance thing for him. And I'm guessing too, like, you know, I guess Mila Jovovich, like she was super famous for like Fifth Element.
Well, she had been like, she had just done Fifth Element. Yeah, she was also in Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, I can picture some exec being like, yo, let's get her in this one too.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, it's I think that's really like the only subplot that I feel is like it's kind of like completely disconnected to really what, you know, Denzel is there for, and the relationship between his son and then him trying to be free. It just, I get like I think you're right, is that an exec or maybe even Lee was kind of like, I need to have some type of romantic.
The movie would have
quality.
worked
It's
just fine without that subplot.
Yeah,
completely.
or even like the abusive pimp thing. It's just like, if you're going to do that, I think you just need to dive into it deeper and have a little bit more nuance. And it just, it feels a little bit light in that department, and so it comes off a
It
little,
feels more archetypal and unexplored in comparison to like the deeply complex relationship between the father and the son that's taking place here, which is like, clearly his heart and soul for Spike Lee is just all into that stuff, and also in conveying dramatically some of the details of what it is that these college or high school prospects go through during this process. Like it really does basically go back and forth between Denzel operating, in the outside world, trying to figure out how he's going to convince his son to do this, and with Ray Allen's character Jesus essentially just trying to keep his head on his shoulders. Like go to school, because his mom wanted him to get an education, even though Shaq and Barkley and Jordan are all talking him up on ESPN. And I wanted to shout out quickly, since Alex has written for them before, the fake Slam article calling him the Jesus of Coney Island that he has hanging above his TV. I just thought was fucking sick.
I also love when he goes to the, I think it might be the Tech U scene, but he goes to the actual court with the coach, and it's John Turturro.
Oh yeah,
and he's just
a cameo,
nowhere.
So
yeah, it's such a great cameo, and he's so funny. Like he's kind of just given this really like
trying to hype him up, be like you'll be like a myth or a legend here. They're like, playing like the Jesus themed pre-show introduction, all that stuff.
And he keeps telling him, he's like, I've been getting on my knees and praying for a savior, and you're it, Jesus. And like just John Turturro just giving that high energy comedy kind of performance it's awesome. I loved his cameo.
I love that conversation they have about the fact that he named him Jesus too, because it's during the first big talk when it's like a one-on-one bit of a street court game, like Denzel rocking his new Jordans. He's emotional just looking at his son. Jesus really emotional and confused about how his dad managed to get out, because he's supposed to be in prison for many more years, and suddenly he's back in his life. And, he's basically telling him, at first, he's not telling him what he needs him to do. He's just, trying to give him, impart lessons, like, I hope you aren't compromising yourself. I pray that you understand why I pushed you so hard, all this kind of stuff. And the main thing that he pushes back against, that he's so annoyed about, he's like, why did you call me Jesus, man? Like my mom calling me in for dinner, everyone being like, Jesus that. And then he's like, everyone's calling him Jesus. And like, you gave him such... like he has to feel like he has to live up to that name. And then he also goes like, it was biblical, and he was like, well, fuck, I understand that it's a Bible reference, but my favorite detail is they come back later in that conversation. He goes, I didn't call you Jesus because of the Bible, even though I am religious and I do believe there's a spirituality to this game. He's like, I named you Jesus after Earl the Pearl Monroe from the New York Knicks, who was one of Spike Lee's favorite players. He actually was the basketball consultant on this movie, so it's very funny that Denzel gets to shout him out like in an actual montage and playing the old, clips of him playing and all of that. And he was like, they called him at one point in the press the Black Jesus, as like this guy was the truth or whatever. And he was like, and that was why I called you Jesus, because you're the truth.
It kind of brings like, I think that moment's important too, because it brings just a bit more of a nuance to like what he dealt with the name, and just having that name be directly connected to his father, obviously in some way.
And also his father's love of the game, and like, not just the Bible.
Yeah. Although what's interesting about that too is that there might even be a little bit of resentment that he feels from that too, because it's like as much as he loves the game, Jesus, as much as he loves the game, and he's gotten incredibly good at it, there is still that lingering resentment that of how he got there, right? With that flashback scene hugely. And the abuse. So it is interesting that it's like, this is, I think it's a heartfelt moment in a sense where he learns more about his dad and himself with that reveal, but it's still built into that, like, I wanted you to be a superstar from day one,
I love Denzel's delivery on, I put the ball in your crib.
Yeah.
And he says it like, you owe me,
right?
Like, and whereas his kid goes, yeah, you fucking cursed me. Like that's the different in sort of like viewpoints on it in kind of a way, as he's being especially pulled in 15 different directions by all these forces who obviously want to cash in on him, whether it's the uncle, whether it's the girlfriend, whether it's the coaches.
And it is so complicated, because it's clear that he's probably he's going to be, most likely anyway, a success and have a really great lifestyle later on, but it's just like, is it worth the damage that's been done prior, you know, and it's
to
hard to say
himself,
actually,
to
because
his
in
sister,
this world,
to his mother,
yeah,
like
right, that's the thing. But then, you know, 10 years down the line, because we live in, you know, the world we live in, it's like he's going to be living comfortably and all that, and there's a lot of actual nuance to just the outcome versus what you had to do to get there, and whether or not it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, like a huge aspect of the drama of this is Denzel going Joe Jackson mode on his kid and hammering into him to make him great.
Yep.
But the mother, I love when we first get introduced to her. It's these series of flashbacks where, you know, it's starting with you know, Jesus reading the letter from his mom that he's held on to, of going to a basketball camp for the summer, and she says, have fun at camp, but remember, use basketball as a tool. And the warmth of his mother is kind of a counter to Denzel, who's very charismatic as a performer, but obviously is this very abusive drunk, and again, psychologically sharpening his son into this superstar. And one of the big moments that occurs at that point in the film that we need to mention before we get to the finale, because it's literally referenced, is when he throws that ball over the fence.
Oh yeah,
because he goes, I fucking quit. And even the other people watching him play with his son are like, stop, man, like stop
you're going
with
too
your
far,
son. Like,
bro.
Like this is just a dad beating his son in public. Like that's just all this is essentially. And it's the lead up to what his mother calls the basketball war, which is when he then comes in, and, you know, he gets into a fight with the kid. He puts his hand on the kid. The mom gets in. He shoves her. She hits her head and ends up dying. And that's what he ends up being in prison for. And it's crazy that Spike Lee made a movie where you come back and you go, you know, I feel for this guy. I feel, because in that moment you don't feel for that guy. You are like, Jesus Christ, this kid is lucky he's not, you know, he's as clearly you know, well adjusted as he is.
I also think it's like the added detail of just having it to be like, obviously it's terrible what he's doing, but for it to be like a 2-second impulse, and just that is the result now, like everything changes now because of that one decision that he makes that is clearly like an emotional decision where he's kind of like just red in the face, he's blinded, and then he does one push, and then that's what kills her. There's just so much sadness to how quick it happens and how easy it happens in a way, because it's not like it's out
and
of
then
his
the lifetime
control.
of
He's
consequences
doing
for
this.
it, right? Like all of this prison stuff is a direct result of it, and that's what I find ultimately really interesting as we sort of get to, you know, sort of like near the end of the film here, is just because like one of the way that the movie opens and closes is comparing the two different environments that these characters occupy. And it is, you know, Ray Allen at the beginning, he's in the street ball court practicing. At the end, he's at the big state college court, where he's just accepted the letter of intent to attend, and he's, you know, presumably going to go on to have an amazing college ball career. Maybe even he's going to go pro, presumably because of the way that everyone talks about him. And Denzel doing the same shooting in his prison courtyard in that environment. And what I find interesting is that, you know, Denzel spends the whole movie trying to convince his kid a little bit that, like, you know, this economic success and this success in general that you have is in part from me, and I'm going to prove that to you, which is what he tries to prove in the one-on-one game, and which is why I love that Denzel, you know, forced a little bit of sweat into Ray Allen to be like, see, there's a little bit here. You didn't just kill me. I'm, you know, and although even by the end of it, I do like eventually that they go, well, yeah, but I mean, he's bigger and stronger and he's a fucking top prospect. He's eventually going to fucking kill you. And he did. So he does both of those things. But I like that he makes them confused. He makes them sweat for a second, that he's hitting these lucky shots. They're trash talking each other. But I find it really emotionally powerful that what kind of ends up happening is that the dad needs to accept his environment in a way. And even though he's screwed, because I think you highlighted already, Jamie, that, you know, he does eventually convince his son to go to Big State, but he doesn't actually technically sign the literal letter of intent they gave him when he was let out. So they use that as a way to backtrack on the deal. And they go, so we're not going to actually commute your sentence, but thanks for what you did.
And doesn't he even say something like, I feel like it's even more mysterious in a way, or clouded, because he says something like, I'll work on it. or something. Like he's like, I'll talk.
Yeah.
And you know it's
he
not
kind of
gonna
alludes
happen.
to it that it's going to get caught, and it's going to be in development in the system forever.
Even
and all
that
that.
hope,
But
the dangling hope, I feel like is even meaner than saying no. You know what I mean?
Well, see, and that's why I like Denzel's response and his reaction of just going out into court and shooting, because it's just it does feel like he's accepting that. That he's kind of found comfort with his new life where he is. He's accept his punishment for the things that he did, whether it was a split-second impulse or whether it was years of deliberately abusing his child. He is like, these are past sins that he believes are actually sins, and he believes he should be atoning for them. Exactly, basically where he is in that moment, and he just accepts that. But the movie still then cosmically connects the two of them in one of the craziest endings of Spike Lee's career, where he throws the ball over the fence of the prison fence, the concrete fence, mirroring the way that his son did it when he was a kid. And literally that ball lands in the college basketball court that Jesus is currently playing. And as those classical music horns and drums are going off, and there's a sniper trained on him being like, don't do it. And
he's going out of bounds or whatever.
Yeah. And his father looks up, Jesus looks up, and he feels his father. He feels this God or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy, just like, the pure emotion of these characters helps something supernatural occur.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
It's amazing. I absolutely love that. And I also like the idea that it was kind of like, you know, his Denzel's meditation or his way of coping with what he did and the lifestyle he has to live now, and him just, I mean, tossing that the ball that symbolizes that to his son, just, you know, passing it over is an unreal. And just I love Lee's style again to like break the reality and just be like, you know, these guys, they're cosmically connected. There's some type of deeper connection they had after that game. There's some level of respect that they had that they didn't have before. It's a really beautiful ending. Like, I kind of choked up when I was watching. I was like, I can't believe this. It's great stuff.
And shouts to the soundtrack too, right? Like the Public Enemy song kicks in too in the end credits. And I remember kind of growing up too, like when this movie came out, like the soundtrack was a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. And then back in the day too, I feel like in the 90s, a lot of these movies had these accompanying soundtracks, and they were just very intentional. And I thought that really added to this movie as well. And it really added to the ending, I feel like.
And speaking on that song too, I thought at first it was a Tribe Called Quest song. Like, can I kick it? Because it's the same sample.
Yeah. It's got the same.
Yeah. And so I feel like I've had to have heard this Public Enemy version, but yeah, it was really cool to hear both. And I was a big fan of the song.
Just having Public Enemy on the soundtrack and also throwing in like all the Aaron Copland like ballet pieces of music as well. Like Spike Lee was just, you know, he was trying to do some interesting stuff, and his cinematographer he opted for here too was Malik Hassan Saeed, who in the same year as this he did Belly for Hype Williams.
Man, that movie's awesome.
So yeah, like this guy, in terms of like also just like the photography, like it looks fantastic. This guy, this one is obviously more classical than Belly. Like Belly, it just looks insane and it's more modern, more music video-y. But like to have both of those in you in the same, you know, few months of each other, like it's really impressive work.
That's awesome.
Pivoting towards reductive rating round once again here. Basically for all the reasons that we've said, this is a very solid 4 for me. My primary issues, if I have any, is that, you know, there are a couple moments where I understand the critiques of maybe Ray Allen is not a trained actor in the same way that like Wesley Snipes was before learning ball, but I do appreciate that as a result, all the stuff of playing ball with Ray Allen looks amazing and natural and exactly how Spike Lee wanted it. He just had a different philosophical approach. He's like, I wanted the ball to be so authentic that I didn't care that I needed Ray Allen to maybe deliver a few stiff lines here or there. And I also think that Lee counteracts that by putting him up against Denzel, having Denzel coach him through some scenes, and also, again, setting him up for success by making it not entirely reliant on Ray Allen delivering the most melodramatic performance you've ever seen for the emotion of the film to work. Like, there's so much just amazing style, amazing montages and music choices. And, you know, I think that, again, Lee combining his obvious love and passion for this sport with his clear acknowledgement of the more unhealthy aspects of this industry and its relationship to young black players who are, trying to get into it. And I just think that weirdly, it's one of those things where you could see someone being like, I love this thing. I know there's something a little wrong with it, but I love it. And, and making an excuse for it. It doesn't feel like that's what he's doing here. It feels like he's weighing both completely equally and being like, this is a contradiction and I feel it every day. And it's a jumping off point for them to do this very colorfully, experimentally stylized and really emotionally affecting melodrama. And also, weirdly enough, not all of them. Every once in a while, there's a spiritual movie, there's a religious movie that kind of works for me. And the idea of, even though it's so on the nose, making this father figure be like, my son Jesus is a vessel, and I'm going to put my suffering and my burdens, I'm going to live vicariously through this kid. And doing that sort of like on a mythic level, but also doing it through this very specific industry is just such an interesting idea. And I think Denzel clearly latched onto that and really makes that work when he gets into it, because I get to the end of this movie and I go, I know this guy's a bit of a drunken asshole who beat his kid and accidentally killed his wife. And my heart breaks for the fact that he goes, yeah, these were past sins that I'm atoning for. And, he personally believes they helped sharpen his son into what he needed to be in order to transcend. And the two of them both kind of transcend by the very end of the film in that way. And I don't know, I find that very beautiful and complicated. And I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's a 4 out of 5. I do think I agree with you about the Mila Jovovich subplot is a little bit it's not explored enough, and it just ends up feeling a little bit archetypal, cliche. But that, I think everything else works very well. I think the father-son dynamic is deep and heart-wrenching and just incredibly interesting to unpack. I love the cosmic ending, handing over like the power. I don't know, it's like giving his son almost his own idea of permission to becoming the leader of his own life and letting go, I think is a really beautiful thing. Spike's style is awesome. I love all those shots that he'll inject into monologues that kind of just paint a bigger picture and kind of make you feel a part of it. A lot of the time he's breaking the fourth wall in order to do so. So it feels as if like you're kind of getting in the headspace of whatever character he's having you kind of identify with. I do think, although I agree with you guys that I think he has some stiff moments, I think he still is a more natural, Ray Allen is still a more natural performer than you would think after an NBA player gets 8 weeks of acting training. So I do really like specifically the scene at the end with Denzel and him on the court. Just their back and forth is great. I love, like, there's a couple of lines in here that I think are great. Like the, just him saying like, yeah, 7 to a very lucky 5, or
yeah, like great.
I'm cutting the I love you shit. And then he starts to play more aggressively and stuff, like just that kind of stuff. It really,
we actually forgot to mention one of Denzel's best line, which is the, you get that hatred out of your heart, boys.
Oh yeah.
I won't say the rest of that sentence,
but yeah, no, I agree. I think that's great too. So, I mean, that scene itself, that one-on-one scene on the court where
he's
the
scene
like,
of the movie.
Yeah, and he puts the paper that he wants him to sign like right on the fence, so you see it in the background and everything. It's just like there's so much weight to it, and it's just so much more than a basketball game. And it's awesome. I love that he's using the game to express this almost fist fight that they want to have, but they aren't going to have. So instead, they're just they're playing ball, and it's really incredible. There's a lot of great moments in this. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah,
you, Alex?
3 out of 5 for me because I'm a big hater. But no, I think out of the two movies that we talked about, like this one, I think I'm probably gonna do a rewatch of it, like maybe in a few weeks or something. I think with most Spike movies, like it's just worth diving into more, once you've done this is the first time I've rewatched this in like, I don't know, like 20 years or whatever. And it's like, I think Spike Lee's movies are always worth kind of diving back into a second time, a third time, once you've familiarized yourself with like the story that he's trying to tell, the themes that he's trying to get at. And I can definitely see my rating for this going higher once I do kind of another rewatch, because I do feel like you guys made a lot of great points. I just need the director's cut version without the Mila Jovovich.
Yeah. Are there any other? Is there any other like big basketball movies other than Uncut Gems that you're like super into? Is there? Did we hit you with the ones that you're like, I think those ones are actually kind of mid in comparison to?
No, I don't know. Like, I feel like basketball,
or you're just harder on
basketball movies wise. I mean, like,
I
think Hoop Dreams, as a documentary, that one's
yes,
obviously
course,
like top tier.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other like real basketball focus.
The Family Channel movie, The Luck of the Irish.
Like, there's just not a lineage of like great basketball movies,
No, I'm trying to think what some bring up, like Coach
Mike.
Carter.
Coach Carter's pretty good. Like, I remember watching a more recent like Hustle with like Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
And that was fine.
When I was a kid,
Space Jam.
Yeah, when I was a
Classic.
kid, I loved Space Jam and Like Mike when I was a kid.
Yes,
But-
Space Jam. I'm okay with, but Space Jam again is not a movie where I'm like, man, I'm gonna throw this on tonight.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna have a good time with it again. So I've just slid. I've made the executive decision of Uncut Gems to me is a basketball movie.
I like it,
and just kind of categorize it that way. Yeah.
Nice. That is a 5. That's a 5 out of 5 in my book.
I thought he was gonna say Air. He was gonna be like the basketball shoe. That's the one.
Air was enjoyable
Basketball
too.
adjacent.
Yeah. Spoiler: MJ signs with Nike. I should block that on Letterboxd. When they go show spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, god damn it.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up for He Got Game for this week's episode. Once again, that was White Men Can't Jump from 1992, and He Got Game from 1998. Thanks so much, Alex, for joining us and for going basketball and movie mode with us this week. This is usually the part of the show where if you've got anything to shout out or plug or anything, like what's going on. I know you guys are going to be gearing up for what is hopefully a Raptors playoff run.
Yeah, that might be a couple days in the playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Might need a Jesus Shuttlesworth or two to change that. No, but like you mentioned up top, Will and I do the Hello and Welcome podcast. Cover the Raptors and the NBA. And honestly, we kind of vibe like how you guys just kind of vibe. You guys use film as a canvas to obviously talk about all these interesting movies, actors, directors. I think we try to come up with the same approach too, just kind of a casual approach to talking about the Raptors and basketball. Try to incorporate some Toronto into like what we do as well. So yeah, if you guys
got it out there, man, the Toronto podcasts, we're forming a union.
Yeah, if you guys looking for another Toronto centric podcast, just feel free to subscribe. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
No, I can't recommend it enough. It's gotten me back into because for a while there I had fallen off after the Raptors won, and then they had those few sort of like dead zone years. I had kind of fallen out of paying as much attention.
Sure.
And the last year or two, I started listening to your guys' show, and it got me back into wanting to follow it. And then it just so happened that this was like one of those seasons where they've been performing better this season.
Yes,
so a little bit.
Sick.
They're better. So we'll see in a few weeks.
All I will say is that all my buddies in LA were clowning on me when they came up about the Ingram stuff, and then I went this year and I went, hey, he's been pretty fucking good.
Yeah, all-star. So you tell
there
him.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, check out Hello and Welcome. And for our listeners, we're going to be back in 1 week's time, where, as Jamie alluded to over on the Patreon, we're going to be going mummy mode, because there is a brand new Mummy movie coming into theaters, and we haven't talked about the original Universal Mummy film from 1932. So real left swing here. We're moving on to Universal Monsters. We're going to talk about the Mummy. We're also going to talk about, though, the Hammer horror remake that they did in 1959, when they were starting to try and make them a little bit more both classy and British, but also kind of colorful and gory at the same time. So we're going to talk about 2 different eras of Mummy films, and then in 2 weeks' time, we're getting crazy. We're going as sleazoids as we can go, as gross as we can go. We're going to be talking about the movie Faces of Death.
Oh, right.
Because there is a brand new remake that's coming into theaters soon that Jamie and I have actually had the opportunity to see. You guys should go and check it out. It's really cool. But the original is literally like a fake snuff film. It was a film that got, people were like, oh man, you need to check this out. Like some psycho cousin would show it to you and be like, this guy actually like fucking died in this movie. And it turns out most of it is fake, but it was designed to have this very taboo documentary about the subject of death itself and make you feel like you were watching snuff film. So we're going to be talking about that film, which is just a very historic exploitation movie. And we're going to be pairing it with the Mondo documentary, Killing of America, which is actually a video essay made out of really disturbing real archival footage throughout the history of America.
We're going live leak mode in 2 weeks.
Kind of. That's kind of what that is. That is and we're going to be doing it with a special guest. So we can't take full blame for in putting this into your eyeballs because a guest is coming on. But you guys will be very interested in who's talking about those films. I think. So
definitely
join us in 2 weeks' time. But that's going to wrap it up for everything. Thanks so much for listening and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.